Key macroeconomic statistics, jobs, and unemployment. Welcome to our third topic in this course, which also is the first discussion of one of the three key economic concepts to assess the performance of the economy. Please read Chapter 3 in the textbook. In this lecture you will learn employment is a key macroeconomic statistic that is intertwined with economic growth and built into macroeconomic theories. But even beyond that fundamental importance of the concept, there is a practical measurement issue about what is employment and what is unemployment. In November 2020, the Economic Statistics Centre of Excellence, along with the United Kingdom's Office of National Statistics, issued a report, which was entitled Public Understanding of Economics and Economic Statistics. Although the study was for the UK, there were takeaways for industrialized countries, such as the United States. With regard to employment, the study found that the public's understanding of the concept of unemployment was fairly good, but that there was an overwhelming lack of knowledge about how it is measured. This lack of knowledge led to its finding that there was distrust in the unemployment statistics. Therefore, it is important that you understand how and why the U.S. employment and unemployment statistics are compiled as they are. Also, be aware that each country has its own definitions that create slight inconsistencies across the globe, though international organizations attempt to reconcile those differences. Our focus, of course, will be on the U.S. statistics. In this discussion you will learn: the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics compiles two measures of employment, one based on a household survey and the other based on administrative records, that is, the establishment survey. From the household survey, the unemployment rate and a host of demographic data about the labor market are derived. From the establishment survey, the number of non-farm jobs and the average wage are estimated. Why the labor force participation rate and the employment to population ratio are important supplemental labor market indicators. Importantly, you will also learn the theoretical counterpart of the actual unemployment rate is the natural rate of unemployment, which is estimated at potential output. This concept has additional names: the full employment unemployment rate, the non-cyclical unemployment rate, and the non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment. You will also encounter what factors are used to estimate the natural rate of unemployment. Through this discussion, we will touch upon facts about the labor market, such as the percentage of the labor force that is a member of a union, the industrial shares of employment, and even about what is remote work and how many people are teleworking. So, let's begin. How is U.S. employment measured? The agency of the government that compiles the employment statistics is the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS for short. The BLS compiles two measures of employment on a monthly basis. One measure is based on the current population survey, that is, the CPS, or household survey, which measures the number of civilian, non-institutionalized people aged 16 years and over that are working. The other employment measure is based on the current Employment Statistics Survey, that is the CES, or Establishment or Payroll Survey, which measures the number of non-farm wage and salary jobs. Why are there two measures of employment? The Household Survey or CPS is used to derive demographic and other characteristics of the workforce from which the unemployment rate is derived. These data measure the number of workers. Let me repeat that: these data measure the number of workers. The Establishment Survey or Payroll Data or CES is based on administrative records, and is less volatile from month to month than the Household Survey data, and measures the number of non-farm payroll jobs. So we have two measures of employment. The CPS measures workers, while the CES measures jobs. The US BLS says both surveys have their strengths and limitations, but they provide different aspects of the employment picture. Another important point of difference is that the household survey measure of employment is more comprehensive, and includes estimates of the number of agricultural and self-employed workers, which are not covered in the payroll measure. Okay, Let's look at the breakdown of these two employment measures. On the left-hand side of this slide is the household survey. Notice the inclusion of unpaid family workers in both the agricultural and non-agricultural industries, self-employed, and private households workers, which include individuals, such as cooks, maids, butlers, and outside workers, such as gardeners, caretakers, and other maintenance workers. The household survey will count people as employed if they are on vacation, out due to being sick, on maternity or paternity leave, involved in labor disputes, and unable to work due to bad weather. However, a person is not considered employed for reporting purposes if one is doing volunteer work, unpaid internships, unpaid training programs, National Guard or reserve duty, jury duty, or even work around one's home. On the right side of the slide is the industry breakdown for the CES or payroll survey. Notice, it is only non-farm jobs, but relatively detailed by industry. As might be expected, the CPS or household employment measure is larger than the CES or payroll employment measure. However, both measures move up and down largely together. The CPS measure of employment includes agricultural workers, but is it important to measure agricultural workers today? In 2023, agricultural workers accounted for 1.4% of U.S. employment, but agricultural workers accounted for 13.3% of workers in 1949. These data are important to show the transformation of the economy and workforce over time. What percentage of the U.S. workforce is unionized? In the mid-1940s, a little over a third of the workforce was unionized. But today only 10% of workers are part of a union. Moreover, the most unionized sector of the workforce in 2023 was the public sector workers at 32.5%, which was more than 5 times higher than the rate of private sector workers, which accounted for 6.0% of its workforce. By state, the highest share of unionized workers is Hawaii at 25.6%, followed by New York at 21.5%. The lowest state share of its workforce that is unionized is in South Carolina at 3.0%. By the way, Arizona's unionized workforce was 4.8% in 2023. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, it is useful to ask the question: what is telework or remote work? A work arrangement that allows an employee to perform work, during any part of regular, paid hours, at an approved alternative worksite. For example, at home or a telework center. We learned from the pandemic that telework is an important tool for achieving a resilient and results-oriented workforce. But, of course, not every occupation can be done remotely. What percentage of the U.S. workforce works remotely? Estimates before the pandemic suggested that about 5% of the workforce was working remotely, partially, or totally. At its peak in May 2020, that share surged to 60% of the workforce working remotely, which established a new higher trend for telework, which is about 25% to 30% of the workforce. As a reflection of the new importance, the BLS added new questions to the Current Population Survey, CPS, starting in October 2022, that focus on telework or work at home for pay. So, we have an official government statistic that could be used to track this change in how people work, along with some private sector surveys, especially from the academic group that formed WFH Research, which stands for Work from Home Research. So, how is telework changing the labor market? The popularity of telework for those employees able to work in that manner is now being viewed by employers as an employee benefit. Employee benefit: savings on commuting expense and time, savings on wardrobe, savings on other expenses at a physical worksite, such as lunches, parking, etc. Employer benefit: Companies can get higher productivity and lower physical cost of office space, larger pool of workers to choose employees, more supply, from which can hold down compensation. Now, let's explore the definition and how the BLS measures employment and unemployment. First, we ask, how is the civilian labor force size determined for the household survey of employment? The starting point is the U.S. population. From that estimate, the BLS will subtract out people under the age of 16 years and those in the military. Additionally, those people who are institutionalized are subtracted from the population to yield the total civilian population, which is the pool of potential workers. Okay, so once the BLS has an estimate of the potential workforce, how is the unemployment rate determined from the civilian labor force size? This graphic from the BLS provides the overview of how employment and unemployment are determined from the civilian non-institutional population aged 16 years and older, which is the potential pool of workers. The first step is to segment those who report they are not working from those reporting that they are working. Those that are working go into the employed pool. Among the group reporting that they are not working, the BLS digs deeper to understand why they are not working. If it is that they are simply absent from work due to vacation, illness, or some temporary reason, then those individuals are considered to have a job and are added to the employed workforce. Among the group of workers that report they are on layoff or are actively looking for a job and available for work, those individuals combined represent the unemployed. Among the group not working, those individuals who report they are not looking for a job for whatever reason, those individuals are included as not in the labor force category, which does not constitute part of the labor force. Then, those individuals who are employed plus those who are unemployed represent the labor force. Therefore, the share of the labor force that is unemployed determines the unemployment rate, the formula of which is shown on the slide. The unemployment rate is shown in this graphic, along with the recession periods designated by the shaded areas. Typically, the inverse of the unemployment rate tends to be a leading indicator of business cycle peaks, but a lagging indicator of business cycle troughs. Why is the unemployment rate an important statistic in macroeconomics? The unemployment rate is an important statistic in macroeconomics because it reflects both short-term and long-term dynamics in the labor force. The unemployment rate fluctuates with the business cycle and with long-term demographic trends. Therefore, this metric has short-term implications for the economy and longer-run implications for labor market policies. Another important labor metric is the labor force participation rate. But what is it? And why is it important? The participation rate formula is shown on the slide and equals 100 times the labor force share of the population. This metric has been important for policymakers, as the labor force participation rate has been trending lower since the year 2000. For a deeper discussion of the issue, see Chapter 13 in the textbook on the disappearing worker. There are a number of ongoing studies investigating the cause of the decline in the participation rate, but is very important to labor market policymakers. What is the employment to population ratio? Here too the formula for the employment to population ratio is shown on the slide, and measures the share of household employment over the population. In the post-World War II period up until about 1980, this measure was often considered a leading cyclical indicator of inflation. However, that cyclical relationship largely weakened or vanished in the period after about 1980. Nonetheless, it still remains one of the important labor market indicators of the full employment potential in the economy. What are the measurement reasons for unemployment? The four measurement reasons why a person may be unemployed are: 1. Job loser, which means the person was employed and was fired or laid off. 2. Job leaver, which means the person was employed and quit. 3. Reentrant, which means this person was previously employed, but has not worked for some time, and is currently re-entering the labor force. And 4. New entrant, which means this person has never held a full-time job for 2 weeks or longer and is now in the civilian labor force looking for a job. These household survey data are reported by the number of workers in each category, percentage distribution, and percentage of the civilian labor force. This table from the BLS shows the type of data available on reasons for unemployment. Historically, when the unemployment share of those leaving a job without having another one to immediately go to rises, this is considered a good sign, even if it is the cause of a rise in the unemployment rate, since it represents confidence by workers that they could secure another job. Now that we explored the measurement reasons for unemployment, what is the theoretical reason for unemployment? One of the key reasons economists offer why unemployment increases is that wages are not flexible or change very slowly relative to changes in labor demand. With labor costs about 2/3 of total product cost, any reduction in final demand will be adjusted through a reduction in the quantity demand of labor, rather than through the labor wage. John Maynard Keynes wrote unemployment is the result of frictional unemployment plus voluntary unemployment plus involuntary unemployment. Today, economists think the theoretical reasons for unemployment fall into 3 buckets: cyclical, structural, and frictional unemployment. This theoretical segmentation of the unemployment rate is shown at the bottom of this slide. We will return to this theoretical concept of the unemployment rate later in our discussions. What are discouraged workers for measurement purposes? An unemployed person, by definition, must be actively looking for work. However, the BLS also tracks persons who are not looking for work because they get discouraged and stop looking. These people are classified as discouraged workers. Are there additional concepts of labor market utilization? Yes. The BLS reports a range of alternative measures of labor underutilization, which they designate as U1 through U6. The original work was crafted by a former BLS Commissioner Julius Shiskin, who modeled these metrics of labor utilization rates after the money stock measures that were increasingly broader definitions of the concept. The official unemployment rate is designated in this table as U3. U1 and U2 are narrower definitions of labor utilization, while U4 through U6 are increasingly broader measures. The broadest measure of utilization, U6, was a popular metric to discuss among politicians during the 2008 recession. What is the theoretical counterpart of the unemployment rate? The theoretical counterpart of the actual reported unemployment rate is the natural rate of unemployment. It is the sum of frictional and structural unemployment rates, but excludes the unemployment due to the business cycle, which is termed cyclical unemployment. The natural rate and its components are unobserved, but have been estimated statistically. The importance of this is that it establishes a goal for the unemployment rate. The natural rate of unemployment has a few interchangeable terms for it, depending on its usage. The natural rate can be called 1. The full employment unemployment rate, 2. The non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment or NAIRU, and 3. The non-cyclical rate of unemployment. The term non-cyclical rate of unemployment is used by the Congressional Budget Office, which provides an estimate of this measure. We shall see later that these all become interchangeable terms in the steady-state economy. Let's explore the relationship between the theoretical and actual concepts of the unemployment rate. How are the theoretical concepts of frictional and structural unemployment defined? The graphic on this slide shows the relationship. The natural rate is the sum of the frictional unemployment rate, which is the share of the unemployment rate from normal turnover of the labor market as people enter and leave it. The structural unemployment rate, which is the second component of the natural rate, represents long-term unemployment where worker skills may no longer be appropriate for the job market. This component of the unemployment rate requires retraining of the worker to correct the structural nature of unemployment. Then, the actual unemployment rate is the sum of the natural unemployment rate plus the cyclical unemployment rate. The cyclical unemployment rate, as the name implies, occurs due to the business cycle. Since the natural rate of unemployment is an estimated concept, what factors does the Congressional Budget Office use to estimate the natural rate of unemployment? According to the latest technical paper, the CBO estimates the natural rate based on 1. The age distribution of the population, which accounts for frictional unemployment associated with long-trend demographics. 2. The scale of structural change, which accounts for structural unemployment. 3. The real wage rate. And 4. The amount of unemployment benefits, which affects the opportunity cost of job search. The third and fourth factors are tied to theoretical reasons for unemployment. Here's a view of the actual and natural rates of unemployment. Of course, notice that the natural rate is rather smooth, since the business cycle effects are statistically removed from the estimate. On the other hand, the business cycle swings are clearly a characteristic of the actual unemployment rate. How do we measure full employment? First and foremost, full employment does not mean no unemployment. Also, recall we mentioned that the natural rate of unemployment has been thought of as a measure of full employment, or the full employment unemployment rate. However, there is another definition of full employment that is attributable to British social economist Sir William Beveridge. He defined full employment as meaning that there is, quote, always more vacant jobs than unemployed, unquote. As simple a definition as that is, the U.S. economic data was not able to calculate the Beveridge concept of full employment until the BLS began to publish its JOLT statistics, that is, the Job Openings and Labor Turnover Survey statistics, which produced estimates of job openings, hirings, and job separations. That survey began in 1999. Is it possible to measure the Beveridge concept of full employment? Well, from the prior answer, you should be saying absolutely. The Beveridge measure of full employment uses the job openings data from JOLTS and the unemployment level for the CPS data. The ratio of the unemployed to job openings provides a window on that concept. When the ratio is above 1, that indicates there are more unemployed persons competing for each job opening. When it is below 1, which has been true since 2021, that represents a very tight labor market, when there are more jobs than workers to fill them. The tight labor market would be a period when wage pressures would likely be more intense, and potentially with it more intense inflation pressures. This leads us to ask, what is the theoretical relationship between the unemployment rate gap and inflation? If the actual unemployment rate is higher than the natural rate, then the labor market pressures will tend to put downward pressure on inflation. However, if the actual unemployment rate is lower than the natural rate, then the labor market wage and demand pressures will tend to put upward pressure on inflation. Of course, when the actual unemployment rate equals the natural unemployment rate, the inflation pressures are balanced or steady. A similar relationship exists for the Beveridge concept. Okay, you may be thinking, how can the actual unemployment rate fall below the natural or full employment unemployment rate? Isn't that impossible? No. The natural or full employment unemployment rate is estimated based on normal or typical output, or production levels, in the economy. However, there are times when production can be above normal output, such as during wars, production facility reopening in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic-induced shutdowns, or even periods when the economy is booming. Hopefully, you have a sense of how employment is measured, and some insightful employment or unemployment measures, and how they are estimated. We also have tried to connect a theoretical measure with an actual measure of the unemployment rate, and further tried to link the gap between those measures to an implication for inflation. Moreover, with that linkage we have started to go beyond data to theory about how the economy functions. We will continue on this road for the next two topics, introducing concepts of inflation and growth, and trying to show a connection from theory that explains how the economy functions. This concludes our discussion of this topic. Take a moment to consider these thought questions before moving ahead to the next topic.